My name is Julia Winters. I'm 23, and I used to think I had the kind of marriage people envied. Quiet, constant, dependable. The kind that didn't need to be loud or showy to be solid. But I've come to realize that trust is quieter than lies. It hums underneath everything, like the soft purr of an engine. Easy to ignore until it cuts out, and you're left wondering when it died. It's strange. You never really notice the beginning of the end when you're living inside it. You mistake the silence for peace, the distance for space. I didn't start doubting my wife because of anything dramatic. There was no lipstick on a collar or late-night text from a stranger. It was a car recall notice. Something stupid. Something so normal that it should have just gone straight into the recycling bin. And yet, that envelope, blue ink, crisp edges, addressed to her maiden name, cracked something open in me. Something that had already been aching, quietly, for years. Claire and I met in a bookstore, of all places. That cliché. She reached for the same copy of Giovanni's Room and smiled at me like she already knew how the story ended. She was 5 years older, all confidence and stillness. I was 24, frantic with the kind of passion only your 20s allow, and she grounded me like nothing else ever had. The beginning was electric. We couldn't keep our hands off each other, always brushing, always kissing, even in grocery store aisles. I used to love how her hand found the small of my back without thinking. She made me feel chosen, seen. But people don't talk enough about what happens after the fire settles. About how touch becomes routine, how words shrink into shorthand, how you start making love like you're checking something off a list instead of diving into one another. The last time Claire kissed me, really kissed me, I think it was last Christmas. Under the tree lights, after too much wine, her lips lingered on mine longer than usual. But even then, I felt something in her hold that I couldn't name. A restraint, like she was performing something we used to be, rather than feeling it. I tried to cuddle with her on the couch last month. We were watching some docuseries I wasn't really interested in, and I just wanted to feel her body against mine. But when I leaned into her, she stiffened slightly. Just for a second, not enough to call out, but enough that I felt it. And when I asked if she was tired, she said, "No, I'm just not in the mood for touching tonight." It wasn't cruel. Claire's never been cruel. But the word stuck with me. Not in the mood for touching. That night, I lay awake, my back to her. I could feel the space between us like a wall. I told myself we were just in a rough patch. That every couple goes through dry spells. That it was work stress. Her mother's declining health. Anything but us. Anything but the truth. Because the truth felt like a betrayal I couldn't explain, not even to myself. I used to feel beautiful in Claire's eyes. Desired. Not just physically, but like she saw me. All my messy ambition, my late-night doubts, the small victories at work. I used to come home bursting with things to tell her, and she'd listen with her full face. Eyes on mine, hands warm around a mug. Now she half listens, or forgets what I said by morning. Sometimes she kisses me like she's clocking in. Like affection is a job, and she's checking off her hours. But it wasn't until I opened that car recall notice that I realized something was truly wrong. I remember the morning so clearly. Sunlight on the kitchen tile, coffee brewing. I was sorting through the mail while Claire showered. There it was, addressed to Claire Emerson. Her maiden name. A car she never told me she owned. I stared at the envelope. My fingers went cold. Not because of what it was, but because of what it meant. In that moment, something shifted in my chest. Like finding a locked drawer in a room you thought you'd built together. That was the moment I knew. There was a part of her I'd never been allowed to see. And maybe, never would. I didn't bring it up right away. I told myself I was being paranoid. That people make mistakes when filling out forms. That maybe the dealership used old records. That maybe there was no secret. No drawer. No locked door. But the next morning, while Claire was making breakfast, humming like nothing was wrong, I slid the envelope across the table like it was nothing. "Hey," I said lightly, pouring my coffee. "We got a weird recall notice. For a Toyota? It's addressed to Claire Emerson." She looked down at the envelope like it was a bug she didn't want to touch. "Oh, that must be ancient. I sold that car before we met." "Really?" I stirred my coffee too fast. "How come I've never heard about it?" She shrugged, casual. "I had a lot of junk cars in college. Didn't think it was worth mentioning." That was it. No hesitation, no crack in her voice. But her eyes didn't meet mine. She flipped the eggs. I nodded like I believed her. That was the start. I didn't want to be that person, The one snooping through drawers and checking browser histories. I wanted to be better than that. I wanted to be who I thought we were, honest, whole. But something had changed in me the moment she lied. I knew it was a lie, not a wild, dramatic one, just enough of a bend to warp the shape of everything between us. She started turning her phone over when she set it on the table. Nothing obvious, just a slight shift. And she changed her lock screen, too. She told me she forgot the old code. Her face didn't even twitch when she said it. I stopped reaching for her in bed. Not because I didn't want her. I still did, fiercely, with a kind of ache I couldn't explain, but because the space between our bodies felt like a chasm. Every night, I lay beside her and pretended to fall asleep before she did. I listened to the way she breathed, counted her sighs, wondered where her mind went when she closed her eyes. There were missing hours, gaps in her day. She'd come home from work later than usual and say traffic was bad, or she stopped to grab dinner, but she never had food with her. Once, I asked her to bring home that Thai curry I love. She said she forgot. Her breath smelled like garlic. I started keeping a journal, writing down every inconsistency like I was building a case against someone I loved. It felt disgusting and necessary. We went out to dinner one Saturday night with friends, a double date. I wore the green dress she used to love. She barely looked at me. But when Sarah complimented her, Claire smiled so easily it made my stomach twist. She didn't hold my hand under the table. She always used to do that, even just one finger brushing mine, a little thread connecting us. But now, I was on one side of a memory, and she was on the other. One night, I caught myself standing in the doorway of the guest room, just staring, imagining how easy it would be to start sleeping separately, to not have to pretend every night, to build walls quietly, kindly. I never used to think like that. The question started to grow inside me. Quiet, but insistent. Who are you, Claire? Not in the accusatory way, but the aching way. The way you ask someone you used to know, when they've drifted so far you can't recognize the shoreline anymore. A few nights ago, she told me she'd never been to Vancouver. We were watching a movie set there, and I said something offhand about how cold the winters were, and she said, "Oh, I've never been to Canada." But I remembered, clear as day, a photo from our second year together. Her on a suspension bridge, bundled in a red coat, smiling so wide her nose scrunched. She told me it was Vancouver. I even remembered the name of the park, Capilano. She'd described the mist on her skin, how it made her feel small and whole. Back then, I believed everything she told me. Now, I don't know what to believe. And that photo? I looked for it last night. It's gone. It started with the VIN. That stupid car recall notice had the number printed in bold across the top, and something about it kept itching at me. Claire had brushed it off so smoothly, almost too smoothly, like someone who'd practiced a line in the mirror. So one afternoon, when she was out at a dentist appointment that went unusually long, I opened my laptop and started searching. I felt sick doing it. Not just because I didn't want to catch her in a lie, but because part of me already knew I would. A quick Google search on VIN lookup websites pulled up the car. A 2014 silver Toyota Camry. Last registered in Washington State. Owner, Claire Emerson. But here's the thing. The registration wasn't from before we met, like she'd claimed. It was from 2017. We'd already been married 2 years. Living together. Sharing passwords, groceries, lazy Sundays in bed. The car had been insured at an address in Bellingham. I sat frozen, rereading the page. My mouth went dry. I'd never even heard of Bellingham. I went deeper. It was like peeling wallpaper. One layer revealed another, and another beneath that. I found an archive directory listing from 2018. Claire Emerson, volunteer coordinator, Linden Women's Shelter. Same name, same face. The staff photo made my blood freeze. She looked just like she did now. Her hair a bit shorter. Same smile. She wasn't a volunteer coordinator for a shelter when we were married. She was supposed to be working part-time at a nonprofit in Portland, helping with grant writing. So who was she helping in Bellingham? And how did she live an entire life I knew nothing about? I called the dealership next. My voice shook. I pretended to be Claire, said I'd lost my documents and needed a copy of past service records. They emailed them. Just like that. The car had been serviced regularly at a garage up north. Oil changes, tire rotations. One visit as recent as 2020. She kept that car for 3 years after we got married. Registered to her old name. At a separate address. I couldn't breathe. I sat in our kitchen, surrounded by the scent of rosemary from the plant she bought last week, and felt like the walls were tilting inward. There's a particular kind of betrayal that doesn't come from cheating or yelling or storming out, but from omission, from the quiet places you weren't invited into, the rooms they locked behind them every time you turned away. I always thought I knew Claire. Her rhythms, her moods, the way she hated scrambled eggs but loved frittatas, the way she bit the inside of her cheek when she was overwhelmed, the way she never cried during sad movies, only afterward, quietly, when brushing her teeth. But this was something else. This was someone else. I spent the next hour digging deeper, my fingers numb against the keyboard. And then, like a final dagger, I found it. An old obituary, dated 2016, for a woman named Marian Foster, age 46, survived by her sister, Claire Emerson of Bellingham, Washington. The obituary listed the funeral home. I clicked the link. My breath caught. There it was. A short video clip. A eulogy recording, maybe 3 minutes long. The woman in it was Claire. My Claire. Standing in a black dress, voice thick but steady. She was talking about Marianne, her sister, about growing up in Montana, about how Marianne raised her when their mother disappeared. She talked about how she and Marianne had only recently reconnected after years of silence, and how grateful she was to be back in each other's lives. And then she said it. There are parts of our past I'll never speak about, not because I'm ashamed, but because they're not for public ears. Marianne knew the weight I carry. She knew who I used to be, and she loved me, even then. My body went cold. Who I used to be. She looked different in the video, not just younger. Lighter. Like she belonged to someone else. Like she'd carried a whole life before me. I replayed that part again. Again. Her voice didn't waver. I wanted to scream. To cry. To ask her why. Why she let me build a life around her while she hid an entire story inside her chest. But all I could do was stare at the screen. At this version of Claire I had never met. The woman I married wasn't who I thought she was. And the truth? I wasn't sure if I wanted to know who she really was anymore. I didn't say anything for 3 days. I walked through the house like a ghost. I cooked dinner. I answered emails. I folded her laundry and smelled her on every shirt. But my body felt like it was hosting something foreign. Rage that had nowhere to go. Grief that hadn't been invited in yet. Claire noticed. Of course she did. She's not careless, just distant. You okay? She asked one night, her eyes tracing me across the kitchen. I nodded, smiled, lied. Because the thing I kept coming back to wasn't just that she'd lied. It was that I didn't know how to stop loving her while grieving a version of her that never really existed. I confronted her on a Tuesday. We were folding blankets, of all things. It was raining, the soft Portland kind. The house smelled like chamomile and wet leaves. I looked up and said quietly, "Who is Marian Foster?" Claire froze. The blanket dropped from her hands. "What? Don't lie," I said. My voice wasn't angry. It was steady, hollow. I saw the video, the eulogy, the car, the address in Bellingham. You had a whole life you never told me about. She didn't speak for a long time. Her face changed, not with panic, but with something.